Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop, Emerald Planet. All the ecology news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's your host, Executive Director of the Emerald Planet, Dr. Sam Lee Hancock.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States as we look around the globe in 144 different nations, looking for those 1,000 best practices, the technologies, services, and products that are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And of course, we're looking for the leadership that's going to have tremendous impact as we go to a planet of 9 billion people by 2050 and possibly 12 to 13 billion by the end of this century. And so we're looking at a number of different issues as it impacts on these 2 billion new people that will be joining us, plus the 7+ billion already on the planet. And one of those, of course, is housing after water, jobs, and other types of basic infrastructure that are needed by all these people. And we have someone in Baltimore, Maryland, which is in the United States, the east coast of the country. And this is Stephen Gondol, who is the Executive Director of what's called Live Baltimore. And he's going to be coming in by Skype. And then sitting right beside me here is Kelvin Manurs, who is the Founder Executive Director of Arm & Arm, and he's going to be as our special guest during this time. Stephen, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Thank you for having me.
Hey, good to hear your voice. How are you doing?
I'm well, and yourself?
Doing absolutely fantastic. Tell us a little bit about what is Live Baltimore. I want to announce that I did hear about you on WAMU FM 88.5, the National Public Radio station here, and you did a really fine job in your interview.
Well, thank you. Yes, Live Baltimore is an organization that began in 1997, targeted solely to address the opportunities with living in Baltimore City, either renting or home buying. Our focus has been really targeted on Baltimore's 277 neighborhoods, the affordability of living within the city, especially along the East Coast between Washington and Boston, and also helping current residents have a role in marketing their neighborhood to prospective residents and creating a positive environment for people to, for living in Baltimore City.
Now, looking at Baltimore, I know that's where you reside and you have your nonprofit Live Baltimore. But why focus on Baltimore as one of those legacy cities where you actually really want to renew and bring about a new quality of life within that city instead of maybe some other place that's a much newer city on the East Coast or other places that may be less challenged as far as jobs, education, healthcare, and other kinds of basic infrastructure?
Well, so the organization was founded by Baltimoreans that were committed to the city. They were current residents, and they really wanted somebody to focus on the positive attributes of city living that wasn't necessarily from City Hall or any other political body. I think the reason why it's important is because Baltimore City has a built infrastructure that is able to house more and more families. As you mentioned the intro segment about the world's growing population. Baltimore City is ready to go now, and since the 1950s we've lost about a third of our population. But what that means is that we do have the potential to grow and house more individuals without tearing up more green space, farmlands, woodlands. Baltimore City has roads and homes and schools and it all throughout the city. And so as an urban planner, it seems intuitive that we would try to grow, house this growing population in an infrastructure that already exists.
Now, looking at that, this was actually, you teed this up very nicely because that was going to really be my next question of the growth in many of the cities around the United States and probably in Europe and other places in these old industrialized cities. So you've enumerated some, but let's revisit that as far as why it really is advantageous for people to move into these older industrial cities and at the same time for the elected officials and the city planners to really emphasize moving here?
Yeah, I mean, there's three cities that we probably, obviously D.C. and New York and Chicago have all had positive gains over the past 10 years. Since the 2010 census, three cities that kind of mostly identify with our background, industrial, tier 2 size population. Milwaukee, Baltimore, Cincinnati have all grown populations modestly, but nonetheless have grown. And I think it's a great sign that these type of cities have potential. And Pittsburgh is not far behind, as are some other cities. And so I think it goes to show that today, much of the built-in infrastructure that we have is what people are seeking, with walkable lifestyles and having more amenities within a 5-minute, walking, or being more accessible to transit. And so people are circling back, to those kind of basic level amenities that have always existed in cities, but as, generations have moved further out, these current generations never growing up with, convenient, walkable amenities are finding it, here in the city, and thus you see the growth of rental and even some, renovated housing units in these older cities.
Yeah, Kelvin, as you know, is part of the conscious capitalism, the conscious community group with King, and so I just want to let him have the next question. Kelvin?
Yes. Hi, Steve. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Well, one of the questions I wanted to ask you was, what are some of the challenges that you're facing in your project, and have you looked already at the aspect of the returning citizen, and if so, what are there any disqualifiers that you see right now or obstacles in that area?
So I heard the first part is some of the challenges we face, and then if the second part to be repeated. But some of the challenges, some of the challenges we're facing are obviously, and I would say like any American city, we're facing safety issues with crime. We are facing, school districts or school systems that are addressing a whole host of other issues along with just educating our children. And so, as we've seen some progress in those areas and some setbacks, we have to balance the realities. And one thing our organization can do is provide access to resources that accurately provide prospective residents, current residents, with the current state of criminal, crime safety, crime prevention efforts, crime within neighborhoods, where it's occurring, what's occurring. And then also with schools, we try to provide a very accurate picture of what the educational landscape is in Baltimore, knowing that it's not entirely positive, not entirely negative, but that it's a school-by-school basis. And so giving people the resources through our website to find out exactly what that current state of these major issues are when it comes to thinking about living in a city.
Yeah, looking at the question, and just so that you understand, Stephen, this was about the returning veterans, for one, also those that have been incarcerated yet have done their time for society, coming back into the city itself. And understand and maybe share a little bit about the numbers as far as the housing stock is available. And when you see the people here in line trying to get information about your housing, my understanding is that you have every type of housing stock possible within Baltimore. Maybe explain a little bit about that and some of the numbers, and then people intuitively can kind of say, that may be an opportunity for me.
Yeah, we as you mentioned, there are some incredible programs, especially for returning veterans, that both the city and city of Baltimore and state of Maryland offer very generous mortgage terms, and obviously for returning felons, that are committed to serve their time. There's a number of programs that are in Baltimore City, throughout the city, to get them back into the workforce. So, obviously tailoring to those needs. But why I think the city has incredible potential for everybody, is that we do literally have, everything from downtown high-rise apartments to more suburban-style detached homes and garden apartments. And with that, we have price points from, you know, very modest rents to incredibly high dollar, you know, properties. And so what we try to do is provide people with the information about average and median home prices throughout all the neighborhoods, which you can find on livebaltimore.com. For every single neighborhood listed there, which is all the city neighborhoods, there are the current calendar year stats for average and median, how many units sold, and renovation permits pulled. As we look at what is the capacity, we do think that there's a wide opportunity, especially with our current, the city's current stock of vacant homes, enumerating about 15,000, I believe, in addition to new construction and renovated. So we definitely don't have a shortage of stock. It's just as much of aligning prospective, you know, residents' affordability and desired unit type.
Do you have another question that you'd like to ask?
Well, actually, I just had a statement. Stephen, I'd love to hook up with you. I have a program that's in the works. It's called Life Lift, and it's focusing on the families of veterans as well as returning citizens from incarceration. And it's a program that helps individuals deal with their thinking, their unhealthy lifestyles, and incorporating healthy lifestyles as well as going into the workforce and bettering or building up their communities. I think it'll be something to look into in the future for you.
Well, that's good. You know, I have a very few criteria for working with somebody. As long as you're in the city of Baltimore, check. As long as it has to do with housing and, you know, our ability to help promote it, check. And 3, that open to, again, you know, fair housing, you know, guidelines, and you know, really there to be a positive benefit. I mean, that's solely a lot of what we do is really try to connect with all the different, you know, developers and investors and home buyers, and just make sure that all of the information is getting across to everybody. So we really like to be a clearinghouse of information for everyone.
That's awesome. A good summary, because I was going to just ask you what you see for the growth over the next 5, 10, 15 years, but we'll go more in depth in that in our next segment, Stephen, so hang in there. Okay. And we really appreciate you being with us. This is Stephen Gondol. He is the Executive Director of Live Baltimore, a very active group. We actually had a chance to listen to him on WAMU National Public Radio a couple of months ago, doing fantastic work. Thank you for being with us as we look around the globe.
I need a job.
Necesito trabajo.
I would like to speak English better.
Me gustaría hablar inglés mejor.
I want to be a U.S. citizen.
Quisiera ser ciudadano de los Estados Unidos.
For over 35 years,
Por más de 35 años,
the Hispanic Committee of Virginia has been serving our community.
el Comité Hispano de Virginia ha estado sirviendo a nuestra comunidad.
Job training and placement,
Capacitación, ayuda para conseguir trabajo,
education for children and adults,
educación para niños y adultos,
immigration, naturalization, and medical referrals
ayuda para los procesos de inmigración y naturalización y orientación sobre médicos
are a small part of what we do.
son solo una pequeña parte de lo que hacemos.
For help, information, or to volunteer,
Para ayuda, información o para ofrecerse como voluntario,
contact the Hispanic Committee of Virginia,
comuníquese con el Comité Hispano de Virginia,
helping everyone participate more fully in American society.
ayudando a todos a participar plenamente en la sociedad norteamericana.
Hey, Lena, where's yours?
Would you notice if you were missing half your kidney function? According to the National Kidney Foundation, 20 million people have chronic kidney disease, and 20 million more may be at risk and not even know it. Anyone with high blood pressure, diabetes, or family history of chronic kidney disease is at risk. Early diagnosis is vitally important. To get the whole story, talk to your doctor and visit the National Kidney Foundation at kidney.org or call for a free brochure. Because when it comes to chronic kidney disease, you might not know the half.
we're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
To the Emerald Planet, as we come to you on a week-to-week basis as we're looking for those 1,000 best practices, the technologies, services, products, and of course the people are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And we have a number of topics. We're covering everything that's green, from very small, insignificant products, how to paint your house, what have you, all the way up to renewable energy, water, wastewater, and of course transportation. But we're talking about housing and the importance of that, and we're using Baltimore, Maryland in the United States as the case study for what we're calling conscious communities. And we have Stephen Gondol, who is the Executive Director of Live Baltimore, coming in by Skype, and sitting right beside me is Kelvin Manurs. He is the founder, executive director of what's called Arm in Arm, and he's here as our special guest. And Kelvin, welcome to Emerald Planet.
Thank you very much.
And Stephen, I understand you're here by Skype.
Hello.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you here. Anyway, I have your logo here. I love city life. Now, I think about Live Baltimore, and then I see your logo. Tell us a little bit about the origin of this logo and how you developed that and its impact as far as encouraging people to live Baltimore.
I'm having some hard time hearing you. I apologize.
Okay, let's just see if we can get you on the telephone possibly, because that worked very well before. Can you hear me now?
I'm sorry, I cannot hear you.
Yeah, let's go back to the telephone if we can. Give us just a minute.
Okay, I can hear you.
Okay, good. Fantastic. Anyway,
Perfect.
I was talking about the logo. I love city life.
Yeah.
And tell us a little bit about the origin of that and how you evolved that and actually have that as far as the logo for Live Baltimore.
That actually started from a dedicated resident who wanted to contribute, her passion for the city, and so she gave the organization that. So that I Love City Life exists on bumper stickers, license plates, coffee mugs, anything just to kind of help people support their love of the city.
Now, looking at Baltimore, this is something that you and I have talked about on telephone, but the proximity to Washington, D.C., it's one of the most expensive housing markets within the United States, actually in the world now. It has a world ranking as far as the top 10 cost. And yet Baltimore has very affordable housing, because I've driven around your city and been in different communities. So tell us a little bit about the proximity to Washington, D.C., and how that is generating opportunities for Baltimore, but also people that would love to have their own home, but work in Washington, D.C. itself.
Yeah, one of the things that we're working on is to show people not just the proximity of Baltimore to D.C., but how many neighborhoods are within easy walk to the Penn Station or Camden Yard Station, and that from there, the opportunities of homes range from $90,000 to $150,000 and up being available to them. And so we're just trying to really get people thinking about, they love their job in D.C., but want to have a higher quality of life, that a 55-minute train ride to D.C. Will connect them between a great neighborhood and a great job.
You think about Washington, D.C. and heavy traffic and, all the things with transportation, but yet that was something that you really emphasized with me, is how close Baltimore is. And of course, you can go back and forth by public transport, and that's something a lot of people don't really think about. Tell us a little bit about the public transport and how really convenient that is, and maybe some of the key points within Baltimore that connect people to right downtown Washington, D.C.
Yeah, state of Maryland operates two regional commuter lines on the MARC system, one at Camden Yards and one at Penn Station. And those trains run a commuter service daily and on through the weekends. And so what we try to show people is that with your commuting 55-minute commute, while not ideal, I think it's still very feasible, especially within the commutes within the DC area alone. That you could get to DC faster from Baltimore than you could from other parts of the DC region. And so between a high frequency options from Mark and walkable communities right around those stations, I think that we can clearly show that Baltimore has a number of very convenient neighborhoods using the MARC system, which is a 7-day-a-week system.
Tell us a little bit about the waterfront area, which we have a photograph here, and it says "Live and Work," which is actually one of the logos that you actually promote through your website. This is really an extremely beautiful area. It's probably one of the top scenes that you could have anywhere on the planet, actually. And so getting around in Baltimore itself is convenient. Tell us a little bit about that, how this living there and working within Baltimore is entirely doable, and maybe some of the job opportunities that people can have in Baltimore.
Yeah, well, what you're seeing is the Inner Harbor, which is the kind of the postcard view of our city. And while it does an incredible job, really given a place for our city, it is just one of our 277 neighborhoods. But the Inner Harbor does have a fair share of housing, apartments, condos. Some of the row homes also a bit higher than the city median average home price. The Live Near Work program that we run, that we coordinate, we work with the City of Baltimore. That's a really unique program that through our employer outreach program, we connect employers to incentive money and to help promote their employees to live near where they work. And so it's anywhere from up to $1,000 to $2,500 match from the city employers, where you get a total benefit of up to $5,000 to live in the city of Baltimore and work in the city of Baltimore.
I know one of the things that you have as far as Live Baltimore is really the emphasis on the environment and this balance between environment and economic development. Tell us about some of the benefits of this Live Near Your Work concept and how that benefits citizens, not only just being that close to their work, but how does that really help the environment?
So one of the key things about it is that either living near where you work and means that you could either walk, you could bike, but it also, for households, it might mean that they could downsize from 2 cars to 1 car. We have a number of options now of, Zipcar and our Charm City Circulator. And so I think the environmental component of that is that we really can reduce carbon footprint by people biking, walking to work, or reducing the need to have a second car. And I think that is sometimes overlooked, but is a really critical factor that city living, in 2016, city living is actually probably has a much greener footprint per household than suburban living, because we can walk to get groceries, we can walk to transit options. That is a shared transit, when you're on a bus, you're with 55 other people, and so if you have something running, that you're getting more people on one vehicle than just a single passenger car. And so we have to look at city living as being a really viable way to for sustainability and to improve environmental efforts.
Yeah, and I think that's really critical in all this. And of course, now, according to the UNDP, the United Nations Development Program, they're saying that about 80% of all Americans now live in urban areas. Of course, that's some of your close-in suburban areas. But that's just phenomenal, because we think of America as wide open and we have all these range areas and everything, but people are gravitating into the cities. So looking at a place like Baltimore, where I guess at one time they're called the Young Pioneers, but the millennials that are actually eagerly looking to be in inner cities, how does that balance this life-work environment nexus that the millennials really have already bought into?
Yeah, well, I think what it's done is that we have gotten more than just young people now. I think city living has appealed to retirees. That if there's one way you're trying to stretch your retirement money further, cities allow you to reduce vehicle ownership, reduce, increase your walkability. And so, and also maybe reduce just from a yard down to a small, patio of the row home. And so we try to really connect it that, it's young people and then old people, but also we're working on a program for families. We really trying to show that families don't necessarily have to go to far out suburbs or exurbs. That if you look, a lot of cities are doing an incredible job with supporting families to live there. So Live Baltimore is right on that with our Way to Stay program, which is doing some incredible work for family retention in Baltimore City.
Looking at the mix, the socioeconomic education mix that you have in Baltimore, I know this is something that you think about on a day-to-day basis. You really work hard with City Council, the school board, and many others. How are you balancing that as far as really getting every type of citizen a way to come in and have home ownership, at the same time improve the environment and improve the economy within Baltimore?
Yeah, I mean, I think that whenever a city like Baltimore is really positioned that it can, from some of our lowest income families to some of our highest income families, that our housing, the available housing stock is out there for everybody. And we're doing some great jobs adding more workforce housing and also improving existing housing really modestly. And so, I think it's, as we look at the socioeconomic, we got to have economic diversity. We have to do a better job improving our racial diversity here in the city. And I think we're seeing that with younger generations coming in, that they're much more diverse. And if we can continue that trend, we really can see Baltimore and hopefully other cities as a real well-balanced city between socio and economic groups. And I think that collectively, anytime that we can reduce unneeded expenditures, whether it is high cost of living because of commutes or high cost of living because of vehicle ownership or other, heating, cooling, I think that collectively we can advance everybody's well-being by having people keep more of their money through more sustainable living.
Well, I'll tell you, it's just been fantastic visiting with you, Stephen. Christopher King of Conscious Capitalism, Conscious Communities had very good things to say about you, and he was absolutely correct. You really know the community and you're doing wonderful work there. And thank you for being with us. This is Stephen Gondol, who is the Executive Director of Live Baltimore. And this is something where people are moving into urban areas and concerned for the environment, but also for their own economy as well as the economy of the United States and the local communities, because it really is this balance between the environment and economy that we have to be conscious of as we move through the 21st century as we create the Emerald Planet.
There's more than just books at the library.
There's more than just books at the library.
Excuse me.
There's more than just books at the library.
Il y a plus que de livres à la bibliothèque.
Hello. You have a lot of great books here today. You know there's more than just books at the library.
I know.
There's more than just books at the library.
I don't want to be hooked to a machine.
I want all the medical treatment available to me.
I wouldn't want my family to have to make this decision.
My doctor knows what's best for me.
An advance directive is your life on your terms. Talk with your family. Decide what's right for you. Then put it in writing.
Documenting my wishes today means my family won't have to make heart-wrenching decisions later.
To learn more, visit www.putitinwriting.org.
1,200 American youth run away from their homes every day. The National Runaway Switchboard is here to help. 1-800-RUNAWAY. If you are a runaway, thinking about running away from home, or a parent or guardian concerned about issues facing your child, call us 24 hours a day. 1-800-RUNAWAY. In times of crisis, hope is just a phone call away. 1-800.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet. As you know, we come to you on a week-to-week basis as we're looking around the globe, and specifically for those areas that really need to be emphasized as far as how we're going to be able to accommodate 2 billion new people joining us on the planet by 2050. And so looking at all the basic infrastructure, the education, health, roads, various types of transportation, as well as job opportunities and all the other things that we need is really the importance of being able to balance the environment and economic development. And I have a gentleman who is actually focused on some special populations, and that relates directly to the case study, Baltimore, Maryland, in the United States that we're talking about. This is Kelvin David Manurs. He's a founder, executive director of Arm & Arm. He's going to be working with the Conscious Capitalism chapter there and also the Conscious Communities. And then still with us is Stephen Gondol, who is executive director of Live Baltimore. I'm going to be starting chatting away with Kelvin, but Stephen, you're here and you can just come in anytime you like. And if Kelvin says something that I find intriguing, I may direct it to you. So look out. You may be getting more questions than what you thought, but we're glad to have you here. So, and Stephen's here by Skype. Kelvin's in the studio. And Kelvin, tell us a little bit about what is Arm & Arm?
Well, Arm & Arm is a program / network for returning citizens from incarceration and veterans. And what it does is offer opportunities to empower individuals who are returning home from either transitioning from the military or from incarceration with tools that help them to be able to make rational evaluations of themselves, their situations, their circumstances. Go on and make proactive decisions in their families and in their community.
Well, this is the whole thing, as you know, Kelvin, is that when people coming out of incarceration or coming out of the military, one of the first things they think about is how do I get work? How do I support my families? And then in turn, how do I take care of the community that's surrounding me? And my background, which I've actually never mentioned here, at one time I was responsible for education thousands of incarcerated persons in both state and federal prisons, and we had 27 jails on top of that. And so I understand getting people to transition out and then not return is really a critical factor. So looking at a city like Baltimore, it's one of those legacy cities, has very affordable housing, but how do you balance that so that they can get the housing, but they also have the incomes to be able to afford that and in turn contribute to their family and the community?
Well, Dr. Sam, that actually relates to our topic for the day. That's right there. One of the things that we do with Arm & Arm, we're peer-to-peer, which means we're individuals that are working empathetically who have been there, walked the exact same path as individuals. So what we do is build one another up. So as I'm sharing my experiences with you and you're sharing with me, you're able to feel more comfortable about what your actual situations are. You're talking about being in the field. You already know that many of the things that individuals who have returned home, either from the military or from incarceration, face is the honesty piece of who they are. And I'm talking about identity. So one of the things is that we use is breaking the identity barrier of how a person actually looks at themselves. And we do that through cognitive techniques. One is called rational self-analysis, but we'll go into that a different time. But the thing about it is we help individuals to build themselves up. As they go through our programs, what they do is walk with mentors as they come on the other side of the program. It's not graduation, it's alumni now. There's a piece that is involved with community work. And that also entails going to community functions, that calls for going to board meetings that they're required. That calls also going down on the Hill to find out what their involvement is.
Now, for people who don't know what you're talking about, this is Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., because we got people watching this from overseas. So, what hill are you going to be climbing up there? So this is actually working with the federal government, and then, of course, you're working with City of Baltimore, with the people there, and then even the State House as far as Maryland is concerned.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there are large numbers, just as you just said. So there'll be large numbers of individuals who are coming home. And the thing is it's important for individuals to be prepared up. It's one thing to get a job. It's one thing to go to school, but it's another thing to be cognitively ready. And I'm talking about thinking, what my thinking is. What is it that led to my situation in the first place? And I'm talking about, in the case of veterans, it might be homelessness, it might be acting out, it might be social adjustment disorders, and these same premises fall on the returning citizen. So what we do is help individuals in these areas to deal with whatever those ghosts might be. We have several different ways that we do that. And after they leave arm in arm, then they're ready and prepared up to begin going forth.
Stephen Gondol, the Executive Director of Live Baltimore, is here with us by Skype. Looking at people who are coming into the city, we work with a number of groups that are looking at retiring veterans, also wounded warriors coming in. Is there any way that your Live Baltimore organization reaches out to these groups to let them know the opportunities, because many are from this region? They look at the housing cost in Washington, D.C. and say Northern Virginia, and they say, well, really, what are my alternatives? And of course, you're providing a real alternative to that. How do you reach out to those types of special populations?
Yeah, that's one of the things we try to do is working with the HUD-approved homeownership counseling agencies, whether they've engaged with people for financial counseling, homeownership counseling, that they are aware that we try to link these individuals to the available mortgage programs that are offered at the state level, which also is sometimes backed with incentives from the city. There are some groups like Kelvin had mentioned, like his, other ones in Baltimore City that have asked us to come out and talk to some of the vets as they've, have gone through their programs and are close to graduation. And so we try to go out and be more proactive with our work, saying that when that time is right, keep in mind that you can be a homeowner. You can come, there's an opportunity here in Baltimore City. And so we just try to be available for, community meetings, special groups, other organizations that are specifically working with the veteran community.
I'm going to follow up on what Kelvin said just a little earlier, Stephen, if you don't mind. City Council, the State House, as far as Maryland is concerned, I know that they really are taking a special focus now in Baltimore because of the challenges of the past. And how do you actually interface, and how would you encourage people that are coming back into the community? They are getting work, they're paying their taxes and being responsible citizens within the community. How then do you see them becoming engaged that may be able to even help you as far as the work that you're doing and collaborating with various organizations like Kelvin's Arm in Arm?
Yeah, we try to use our events. We do 6 home buying events throughout the year to introduce people to real estate professionals, neighborhoods, programs that can help them with mortgages and incentives. And so those 6 events are really one way for them to work with us. And sometimes then we also just encourage them to come to our office. We have one-on-one engagement, whether through in-person, over the phone, through email, or through monthly workshops we host. We really try to break down the perceived barriers that home ownership or living in a city is only for either people who can afford high dollar condos, or are confined just to row homes. That it's a broader picture, and really when you look at it, we hope to remove any obstacle to that information. So starts with information, and then we go from there.
That's fantastic. Kelvin, go ahead.
No, I'm right with you on that, Stephen. One of the things that we end up looking at with individuals who are returning and veterans is that they don't even know what they're eligible for, or what the steps are. So if you have someone who is with you that is walking you through it, not only are they your peer and your mentor, but you're now believing all the more that you can. And that is so important to be able to do, but not only to introduce the program, but have someone to walk them through it, someone that they trust and feel safe with, instead of saying, okay, I can't do this. He might can do it, but I can't. So, you know, that barrier is, when that barrier is down, that is so important. That's one of the things that I'm really, really excited, Doc, about dealing with Baltimore. You know, I am so excited about the number of individuals who are coming home who will be walking with someone else just like them.
Yeah. Looking at this, and I'm going to go back to Kelvin, but Stephen, just chime in anytime you like. Looking at conscious community, the concept of that. You've interacted with Christopher King, you know, of the conscious capitalism, conscious community. How do you perceive that as being helpful to the special populations that you're reaching out to? And in turn, that relates to, you know, this broader base that Stephen wants to bring into his Live Baltimore, not only just for the housing stock, but also as far as jobs creation of all kinds, educational opportunities as they bring their children. They're bringing more people into the school system than which needs to improve and accommodate, and the basic infrastructure.
Well, look, Doc, it's just like what I was alluding to earlier. The thing is individuals who are coming home have their part. But you know, the other part is on the part of the community. And that's one of the things that I advocate for. I'm also known in Northern Virginia as the challenge man. So I submit challenges to authorities and police departments to go forth on behalf of returning citizens and veterans. And I do the same to the citizens of these communities to go forth on behalf of the authorities who are in charge, as well as in the community. One of the things that's so important, it's important that community members know who these other individuals are, as you just said, special individuals and things of this nature. The thing is that unless I get outside of my comfort zone, which is something that I'm looking forward to, just as Stephen was talking about with these different functions and events, to have individuals to do who are community members to know who other individuals are. And that in today's society is our task in building conscious communities, because it's going to be necessary. If we're going to eliminate the issues that are already at hand, which we're experiencing, we have to be involved.
Okay, well, we heard the music, so that means we're going to have to cut off for right now. Kelvin Manurs, sitting right beside me, founder, executive director of Arm & Arm. Stephen Gondol, executive director as far as Live Baltimore. And we're talking about housing stock, but also jobs, the environment, everything that goes into quality of life as we create the Emerald Planet.
Some dreams are universal. Dreams that inspire us. Multiple sclerosis is a devastating disease that changes lives forever. The National MS Society does more for people with MS than any organization in the world. But we can't do it alone. To get involved, visit us online at nationalmssociety.org or call 1-800-FIGHT-MS. This is why we're here. Because nobody dreams of having multiple sclerosis.
What's wrong with this picture? Half of young Americans can't locate economic powers like Japan and India. 20% can't even find the Pacific Ocean. Without geography, our children aren't ready for the world. Geography is everywhere. It's incredible creatures, rhythm, fashion, flavor. It's economics and politics. It's change. Understanding connections between people and places is critical in the 21st century. That's why we created mywonderfulworld.org. Go there now for your free parent and teacher action kits and give our kids the power of global knowledge. Because kids who understand our world today can succeed in it tomorrow.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you weekly, looking around the globe in 144 different nations, looking for those 1,000 best practices, technologies, services, and products that are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. I'm Dr. Sam Hancock, the President, Executive Director of Emerald Planet and the Emerald Planet TV. And we really appreciate you being with us because we're talking about a subject that really is not quite as important as water and energy, but yet it's right in the top 5. And this is the whole thing about housing and how then are we going to provide the jobs and then the economic protection that's needed for people to live in urban areas, because the United States, like most nations around the globe, is rapidly urbanizing now with almost 80% of the people within urban areas. And I have sitting right beside me, which is Kelvin David Manurs. He's the founder, executive director of Arm & Arm. And then also joining us by Skype from Baltimore City, which is really our case study we're talking about in this program, Stephen Gondol, who is the executive director of Live Baltimore. And Stephen, they're going to bring, there you are, you're going to be with us and we'll be drawing you into the conversation. But Kelvin, you've been very much involved in Northern Virginia, which is the southern part around Washington, D.C., the United States capital. And now you're moving into Baltimore because of the work that you're doing with the Conscious Capitalism organization and helping to establish the conscious communities there. And we've talked about the importance of conscious communities, but how do you take these special populations, returning veterans, wounded warriors, returning incarcerated that are coming back into the community, how do you make them feel like they're part of this conscious community so it's something that's not just being talked about, but it's something that's very real and tangible that can in fact impact their lives, the lives of their families, and then everyone that's around them in their own special community?
Well, the biggest way that we do that, Dr. Sam, is through empathy, and that's the same vehicle that we use in the communities. Because the thing is I don't feel comfortable with who you are if I'm not involved with you. It takes us a minute to know one another, so it's going to take a little time, but it's also going to take effort. So my effort is talking to individuals. My effort is in taking individuals with me to other events. Just as when I met you through Chris King, we met together, and now we have a relationship, and it's no different with the community involvement. So one of the things that we face is having individuals in the groups as they're learning themselves, being willing to talk about what's really going on with them, being willing to drop off old unhealthy value systems and incorporate new. But then after that, also taking individuals into events. A lot of these things are new. Totally new events, totally new areas, totally new restaurants, the whole nine. So that, along with the community, bringing the two together is sometimes painstaking, but nonetheless it's necessary, and eventually it becomes comfortable because we know one another not by our title or our back identity, but who we are, and that's a conscious community.
Yeah, looking at this whole thing, and of course we have Stephen Gondol here, which has Live Baltimore, and he has that special focus, but he has, you know, this fantastic strata, so you can accommodate virtually any socioeconomic background that you have within the community. So looking at that, this whole thing of education and healthcare and the jobs aspect of this, jobs training, employment opportunities. How do you meld all this together so then you're really getting at how we build a more viable, this new America that we're talking about as far as sustainability, as far as resiliency, the conscious community? How do we bring all this together so that we're improving the environment, society, and the economy?
That's actually the focus of conscious capitalism. What we're doing is bringing people together who are just like us, introducing them into the work that we're doing, and making them aware of how important it is. Because there's two ways that we're going to go. Either we're going to go the way we've been going, which we know what that has brought us so far, or we're going to start going into a better way of living. And that's going to involve everybody. It has to. Otherwise, it's only going to continue to get worse. And the way that we continue to do that is by empathy. Empathy is the word here, Doc. We're going to have to empathetically deal with individuals who are like-minded. Let me give you a quick for instance with that. I have one member of Arm in Arm who's legally blind. So what I did was pair him up with an individual who was totally blind. If I have an individual who has dealt with domestic violence, then I pair them up with individuals who deal with domestic violence. And it's the same. One of the things that is important that we get over is hiding who we are. The only way that we can truly be free is to begin to address, first of all, with myself, what my situation, circumstances, stressors are, and then begin to write about it, take a look at it, and overcome it. And we do that by talking with others. It doesn't have to be a counselor. Doesn't always have to be a counselor. But if I begin to do that, then I begin to be free of it, and I'm able to reach out to others. And that is really the focus of the conscious movement.
Stephen, looking at the various groups, I know that you deal with a very diverse group, not just with the populations within Baltimore, but among the NGOs, non-governmental organizations, nonprofits, also governmental agencies. How do you meld all those together so that you're reaching to, in essence, every strata of the society that's either in Baltimore or be coming into Baltimore in order to achieve your objectives, but at the same time to enrich the various communities that you have within Baltimore?
I think it starts with the base belief that every resident matters. And for us...
Can you say that again? I think that's a profound statement.
Yes, it is.
You know, all the groups you mentioned, I think we all share one belief that every resident matters. And again, we have an opportunity for homeowners across the economic spectrum, individuals who, you know, as Kelvin has mentioned, either coming home from war or from serving prison time, to a young college graduate, to a family, to a retiree. We have to acknowledge that, you know, we have this in Baltimore City, and if we do our job right, we can connect them to programs that would help them get down payment, closing cost assistance, property tax relief. But also, it might make them the first person in their family, you know, to be a homeowner. True. That is really important. That if anything we can do, it is to get this information to them, and the end result being, you know, whether it takes a month, a year, or 10 years, whatever it takes, that they eventually have felt that they've been supported, and at the end of the day, they have a place that they can call home.
Now, this is very interesting, Stephen, if you don't mind if I come back to you, but this whole thing about we're with the government or we're with a nonprofit, we're here to help you, you know, that's kind of the standing joke about the Internal Revenue Service and other arms of the government. But it sounds like what you're doing in Baltimore, that this is a reality, and correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like the government agencies, the nonprofits, the educational system, all have similar marching orders that we're really here for the citizens, whether they're currently here or they're going to be moving into the community. And as you say, every resident matters.
Yeah, I have to admit, you know, the Department of Housing, Office of Home Ownership in Baltimore City, and the State of Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development have done an incredible job of saying we will provide the the economic resources if these non-governmental entities like Live Baltimore and the HUD-approved counseling agencies and some of the community development groups will say, if we all come together to work and educate people and bring them there and help them find neighborhoods, find homes, and find incentive programs that would contribute to them getting into the house, then we're there, and so it has been an incredible partnership. And I got to say, the developers and that have also are coming along are doing a great job of providing quality, affordable housing to these prospective buyers.
I think it's fantastic. And also through the conscious capitalism, Kelvin and Christopher King and the work he's doing, and of course he has Rich on the real estate side, he has Kwesi, as far as the financing, and you have others that are very much involved with this brain trust to bring this about. How do you see this resource base coming from King and his organization that really goes in to help you, what you're doing arm in arm, and at the same time helping to Live Baltimore?
Actually, it's a chain. It's right there, and actually, what that is the collaboration, as opposed to networking. That's why I love the phrase collaboration, Dr. Sam.
How do you define the difference between collaboration and networking? Because most people think networking is the be of all and the wherewithal of everything, but collaboration really is the name of the game.
Absolutely. And collaboration is helping an organization, an individual, an entity with no strings attached. Many times with networking, you're looking to be a part of, and you're looking to gain something.
You want something back for whatever it is that you're getting out, or you want more back than what you're giving out.
Absolutely. But with collaboration, you're just you're directing individuals or putting instruments in place for individuals to come together, or entities to come together. And that's what happens with us. As individuals are coming home in transition from the military or from incarceration, these individuals are getting built up to work on themselves. They work on themselves, they're feeling better about themselves. Now they're working with not only themselves, but other individuals just like them. That's arm in arm. That's individual with individual. Then it goes individual, and family, because now the family is involved. They're being built up. So they're talking about what the issues have been, because it's not only the individual who's away, it's also the family who is dealing with this. So it's not just an individual, it never was. So we're dealing with that. Now we have the family involved, so now it's the community. And that's where the conscious community gets involved. And that's where organizations like Steve's get involved, because they're offering the resource of, listen, you can afford to live here too, and ways to do that.
That's fantastic. Steve, thank you for being with us. I guess you can still hear me. I know the music's playing. You still hear? Thank you for sharing about Live Baltimore. This has worked out very well. Thank you for being with us the entire program. And Kelvin, thank you very much for being in the studio and being part of the conscious community as we look around the globe to create the Emerald Planet.